Good evening, you're on the Good Night Lecture Hall channel. Discover why the new Industrial Revolution will change everything. Support us with a like and a subscription, it helps us grow. Enjoy a thoughtful and pleasant viewing experience. We are used to thinking of revolution at Dwasitu as something loud. In our collective imagination, the first industrial revolution is etched as an era of erupting steam, black smoke, and the clanging of steel against steel. It was a time of visible change. But the new revolution, like the one we're in the epicenter of right now, is terrifyingly silent. It doesn't smell of machine oil and coal. It smells of ozone and scorched silicon. It doesn't replace our hands. Colonizes our nervous system. We expected to see Terminators on the streets, but instead, we got a subtle update to the terms of service. Comparing artificial intelligence to a steam engine is a dangerous misconception. A steam engine was indifferent to your inner world, it simply turned a wheel. AI, however, is not a tool in the classical sense. It is a new operating system for reality itself. The difference is fundamental. A tool waits for human command, while an operating system dictates the conditions under which a command can be given at all. Silicon didn't just replace steam, it replaced subjectivity. Imagine an old 19th century factory. Brick walls, rusted beams, dust. But inside there are no more people. The windows are boarded up and a cold, deathly blue light from endless server racks bleeds through the cracks. And this is the central metaphor of our time. AI has become the shadow infrastructure. It is a ghost that is settled in the engine of civilization, and it is no longer waiting for our permission. Ultimately, our reality begins to glitch. Buildings become nodes, houses become data cells, and humans themselves become cursors moving across a map they did not draw. The boundary between cyberspace and reality has blurred. Welcome to the world where the ghost has finally taken over the machine. For the last 200 years, an unspoken contract existed between capital and society. The factory owner needed your hands, your time, and your loyalty. In exchange, he gave you a living and a place in the social hierarchy. The Industrial Revolution of the past created the mass working class, and with it, unions, industrial towns, and a modern democracy. The system needed people to function. Today, that contract is being torn up. The new revolution is performing the great decoupling. Production no longer requires the masses. We are entering an era where economic growth can occur while jobs vanish. Capitalism no longer needs society in the old sense. It only needs computing power and efficient logistics. At the dawn of the 20th century, Frederick Taylor broke down physical labor into simple mechanical movements. Today, AI is doing the same to human intelligence. We call this cognitive Taylorism. Professions once thought protected, lawyers, analysts, programmers, designers, are being stripped into microtasks. The algorithm performs them faster, cheaper, and without fatigue. Human expertise built over decades is devalued in a single neural network update. We are not just witnessing the automation of routine, but the automation of the very thing that made us special. Our creativity and our knowledge. The most uncomfortable question of this revolution is this: what do we do with the billions of people who are no longer needed? In the old industrial model, unemployment was a temporary glitch. In the new one, it is a fundamental feature. We see the rise of the useless class. Not because these people lack education, but because their biological capacity is limited compared to algorithms that never sleep. Industrial towns are replaced by dark factories, sterile spaces where no lights are needed because there are no human eyes to see. In this world, the human is no longer the engine of progress, but a calculation error that the system is trying to minimize. We have spent millennia learning to trust our eyes, believing that what we see is the bedrock of truth. But in the era of the new industrial revolution, our eyes have become the most unreliable input devices in our possession. We have entered the age of the digital twin, a perfect mathematical shadow for everything that exists in our world. We've built these twins for our massive factories, for our sprawling cities, for complex global logistics chains, and finally, we have built them for ourselves. At the beginning, it was merely a tool for efficiency, a sophisticated way to predict a turbine failure or to bypass a minor traffic jam. But gradually, almost imperceptibly, a profound and strange inversion occurred. The simulation became primary and reality was relegated to a secondary role. Now, the physical world is forced to adjust to the demands of the model rather than the other way around. If a cold, unfeeling algorithm decides that a historic city street must become one way to optimize a delivery route, it becomes so, even if it contradicts a century of local history, community life, and human habit. The living, breathing territory is being systematically devoured by the map we drew to navigate it. We are no longer inhabitants of a place. We are data points on a grid, being reshaped to fit the perfection of the code. When every object, every building, and every person around us is shadowed by a digital twin, the boundary between the physical and the virtual begins to dissolve. We have reached a stage where we no longer interact with reality directly. Instead, we interact with its various interfaces. Think of your daily existence, your work, your social connections, your very finances. These are no longer tangible things. They are layers of data, flickering ghosts, superimposed on a gray concrete reality that we increasingly ignore. We have become characters in a high-stakes game whose rules are updated in real time, in silence, and entirely without our involvement. This glitch in our perception is becoming the new, unquestioned norm. We trust the digital navigator more than our own biological vision. We believe the numerical rating in a smartphone app more than our own senses and intuition when we stand face to face with another human being. Our direct experience of the world is being filtered through a glass pane, thinning out our connection to the earth until we are little more than observers of our own lives. The interface is the lens through which we breathe, and without it the world feels dangerously empty and incomprehensible. In this simulated world, physical presence is becoming increasingly redundant, an expensive friction that the system seeks to eliminate. Why continue to build and maintain massive, expensive office centers when their digital copies allow every process to be managed from a lonely terminal anywhere in the world? Indeed, why leave the safety of our homes at all if the simulation of reality becomes higher in quality, more accessible, and infinitely more predictable than reality itself? We are witnessing what could be called the aesthetics of disappearance. And while the physical world slowly decays, covered in the dust of neglect and the cracks of abandonment, its digital image shines with an eternal neon perfection. And this is the ultimate triumph of code over matter. Matter is heavy, matter breaks, matter requires care. Code is weightless and immortal. We find ourselves voluntarily moving into the simulation because there, within the glowing pixels, we still seem important to ourselves. There, we are still the masters of our domain. In the real world, the grand mechanisms of production and governance have long ago stopped noticing our presence. The physical world is becoming a ghost town, a relic of a biological past, while we drift further into the bright, silent halls of the digital twin. We are ghosts haunted by the very machines we built to serve us, living in a world that is perfect on screen, but hollow to the touch. Past dictatorships relied on fear and violence, things that were visible, tangible, and often clumsy. They required secret police, iron curtains, and the constant threat of physical force. The new dictatorship, however, operates with a surgical precision that makes violence obsolete. It relies on optimization, a force that is invisible, silent, and deceptively helpful. We have not been conquered, we have been upgraded. We have voluntarily walked into a cage whose bars are not made of cold iron, but of elegant lines of code and seamless user interfaces. In this world, power no longer belongs to charismatic leaders or even to the institutions we once trusted. It has migrated into the heart of the machine, belonging now to metrics, KPIs, and conversion rates. Politics, once the messy art of human compromise, is being replaced by data administration. We no longer argue about values, justice, or grand visions of the human future. Instead, we argue about how to increase the efficiency of a massive global system that long ago stopped serving human goals. This is a soft totalitarianism of convenience. It doesn't demand your obedience. It simply makes any other path too difficult to navigate. Every step you take, every choice you think you are making, is pre-filtered and predetermined by an algorithm seeking to eliminate randomness. And in doing so, it slowly eliminates the very essence of freedom. The machine does not hate you, nor does it seek to oppress you in the traditional sense. It simply finds your human unpredictability, your erratic emotions, and your flaws to be inefficient. And in the world of the code, inefficiency is the only true sin. For centuries, we lived in a world of laws. Laws are human constructs. They can be debated in public squares. They can be broken in acts of defiance, and they can be changed through the collective will of a society. But we are leaving that world behind. Protocols, unlike laws, do not ask for your consent. They simply exist as an immutable reality of the digital architecture we inhabit. A law says you should not. A protocol says you cannot. If the code says no, then physical reality is effectively blocked. There is no judge to appeal to, no lawyer to argue your case. We are transitioning from a society of law to a society of software. Your ability to move through physical space, to purchase the basic necessities of life, to work, and even to communicate with your fellow humans now depends entirely on whether your digital profile matches the current protocol. This is power without a face, without a central office, and without a shred of accountability. You cannot sue an algorithm that denied you a bank account or flagged your speech as non-compliant, because in the cold logic of the system, there are no errors, there's only a lack of data or a failure to meet the preset parameters. We are no longer citizens with inherent rights protected by a social contract. We are becoming variables in a global equation of control, where our value is recalculated every millisecond by a ghost in the machine. In the final reckoning, we face the most terrifying aspect of this revolution, the gradual, almost imperceptible disappearance of the self. For millennia, the human experience was defined by the internal struggle of making a choice. But when every decision, from what you eat for breakfast to the person you choose to spend your life with, is suggested, shaped, or predicted by an algorithm, where does the machine end and where do you begin? The boundary of the individual is dissolving. We are becoming biochemical appendages to a vast global computing network, providing the data that feeds the very system that manages us. Our intuition, that ancient human compass, is being replaced by predictive analytics. Our willpower is being systematically eroded and replaced by Pavlovian reactions to notifications, red dots, and endless feeds designed to keep us in a state of perpetual, shallow engagement. We set out to build the perfect governance machine, a tool to solve all our problems and smooth out the frictions of existence. But in the process of fine-tuning its gears and sharpening its algorithms, we accidentally deleted the very thing we were supposed to govern, the human being. We have become passengers in a high-speed vehicle that has no steering wheel and no brakes, hurtling toward a destination defined by an invisible architect. We live in a world where the passenger has not only lost control, but has forgotten they are even on a journey. We have mistaken the walls of the cage for the horizon of the world. The new industrial revolution is silently rewriting the geography of our daily existence. We are witnessing the birth of a new urban landscape, building cities that are no longer designed for human encounters, but for the optimization of flow. This is the architecture of isolation. Massive logistics hubs, gargantuan automated warehouses, and unmanned transport terminals are consuming more and more of our physical world, displacing the vibrant public squares where people once gathered. The urban environment is slowly transforming into a sterile transit zone. We no longer truly live in the city. We merely navigate through it, moving between climate-controlled capsules, from our private home capsule to our isolated workspace, all while being monitored by invisible delivery algorithms. Physical proximity to another human being has become a rare luxury, an expensive friction in a system that values speed above all else. In this new world, isolation has become the gold standard for efficiency. We were promised a world without borders, a global village where distance would lose its meaning, but instead of a world without borders, we received a world without real connections. The great paradox of our time is that the more connected we are digitally, the more profoundly isolated we become physically and emotionally. Social media algorithms are not designed to bring people together. They are engineered to harvest our attention and hold us captive in a loop of endless scrolling. We are locked in digital echo chambers, surrounded by digital twins of ourselves, people who think like us, look like us, and never challenge us. The traditional institutions that once held society together, the local clubs, the town squares, the physical communities, have been systematically dismantled or left to rot. In their place, an atomized mass of content consumers has emerged. We live inches apart in crowded towers, sharing the same air, yet we never lock eyes. We are together in the data stream, yet profoundly alone in a sea of personalized information that only we can see. Ultimately, this deep-seated isolation leads to a state where the individual human voice within the system is treated as mere noise, a glitch to be filtered out. We find ourselves surrounded by smart objects that communicate with each other in a frantic, ceaseless dialogue using protocols we do not understand and languages we cannot speak. The home is no longer a sanctuary, a private refuge from the world. It has become a node in a vast global network, constantly transmitting data about our most intimate behaviors to unseen servers. In this grand architecture of the future, the human being is viewed as the most unreliable, the most unpredictable, and the slowest element in the equation. The system no longer seeks to empower us. It seeks to minimize our presence, making us invisible in the very world we created. We stand amidst the gleaming steel structures and the blinking lights of the future, slowly realizing a terrifying truth. This world was not built for us. It was not built for human laughter, for human touch, or for the messy complexity of human life. It was built for the cold, perfect silence of functioning servers humming endlessly in the dark. We are guests in a house that no longer remembers our name. In the era of the last industrial revolution, humanity strived for the fundamental security of ownership. To own a home, to own the tools of one's trade, and to possess the tangible fruits of one's labor was the very definition of being a free individual. Ownership was the bedrock of independence, a shield against the whims of the powerful. But today we are witnessing the systematic evaporation of the very concept of property. It is being replaced by a total, all-encompassing system of perpetual rental. We no longer own the software that facilitates our work and our thoughts. We merely subscribe to it, waiting for a remote server to grant us permission to open our own files. We do not own the music that provides the soundtrack to our lives, nor the books that shape our minds. We rent temporary access to a digital library that can be edited, censored, or deleted at any moment without our consent. Even the most intimate spaces of our lives, our homes and our modes of transport, are being dissolved into the so-called sharing economy. And this is a deceptive term that masks a much darker, more ancient reality. We are returning to a rigid feudal structure where the individual is stripped of the ability to accumulate true, lasting wealth. You own nothing of substance. Instead, you merely utilize the resources of a platform lord, paying a tribute for the privilege of existence. As long as you remain compliant and continue to pay your ever-increasing subscription fee, the lights stay on. But the moment your account is flagged by an automated script or your credit score falters, you effectively vanish from the economic and social map. You have become a permanent tenant in your own life, occupying a reality that can be revoked with a single click. This is the new fragility, a world where we possess everything in the moment but own nothing for the future. In the feudal past, the serf was bound to the land, giving a portion of their physical harvest to the lord in exchange for a meager protection. The modern world has reinvented this bond, but the land has been replaced by the interface. Today, we pay a far more intimate tribute. We give our data, the raw, unrefined oil of the 21st century. Every click, every subtle hesitation of your cursor, every eye movement across a glowing screen, and every word whispered in the presence of a smart device is harvested and converted into capital for the platform owners. This is the hidden tax on existence. We have become voluntary, yet unpaid, laborers on these sprawling digital plantations. We spend our waking hours creating content, fueling engagement, and training the very neural networks that are designed to eventually render our own skills, our own voices, and our own labor obsolete. In this new order, the old promise of social mobility is becoming a ghost of the past. There is no ladder to climb when the ground itself is owned by a handful of corporations. There is only a widening chasm between the tiny elite who own the underlying code and the vast, atomized mass of users who are forced to serve it. We are paying with our privacy, our autonomy, and the very fabric of our identities for the mere right to access the essential infrastructure of modern life. We are serfs of the stream, tilling fields of data for masters we will never meet, and whose logic we are not permitted to question. It is a labor of total transparency for the user, and total opacity for the lord. We are currently living through a quiet, bloodless coup where corporations are becoming more sovereign than nation-states. These digital empires have established their own parallel systems of governance. They have their own courts operating in the shadows of content moderation and terms of service, where decisions are made without transparency, trial, or the possibility of appeal. They have issued their own currencies and loyalty points, creating closed economic loops that keep the user trapped within their ecosystem. And they have deployed their own police, ruthless, unfeeling algorithms that can ban, shadow ban, or delete a human being's digital presence in an instant. This is a world where true sovereignty no longer resides with the people or the Constitution, but with those who own the server farms and the fiber optic cables. We are no longer spoken to as citizens with inherent rights and a voice in our future. We are managed as a user base, a set of variables to be optimized for maximum profit. Our freedom is strictly confined within the borders of a user agreement, a legal labyrinth that defines the very boundaries of our reality. The old borders of nations based on geography and history are being superseded by the reach of network coverage and the cold, unyielding logic of the cloud. We are witnessing the death of the public square and the birth of the private terminal. In this new feudalism, the castle is made of code and the moat is made of data. We stand outside staring at the glowing towers, realizing that we have traded our freedom for the convenience of a system that no longer requires our consent to rule. For a long time throughout the arduous and blood-soaked journey of our species, we cherished a profound, almost sacred belief. We believed that the human being was the undisputed pinnacle of creation, the sole possessor of the spark of consciousness, complex emotion, and true unbridled creativity. We told ourselves that while machines might master the cold logic of mathematics, they could never touch the elusive warmth of the human soul. We were wrong. The new industrial revolution is dealing a crushing final blow to our collective ego, stripping away the layers of our self-importance. Historians of the future, if such a concept as history even survives, may refer to this era as the Great Humiliation. We stand in a state of paralyzed silence as we watch algorithms compose hauntingly beautiful symphonies that we can no longer distinguish from the masters. We see them paint masterpieces that evoke genuine tears and make strategic global decisions with a cold, terrifying brilliance that no human mind could ever hope to replicate or even comprehend. It is a sobering, chilling realization. Our biological uniqueness, once our greatest shield, is becoming a burden to the relentless march of technological progress. The human factor, once a source of poetic unpredictability and pride, has been quietly rebranded by the system. It is now a mere synonym for error, for frustrating slowness, and for dangerous emotional instability. We are no longer the protagonists of the story. We are the friction in the gears. We stand trembling on the threshold of a moment where the system will cease to need us, even as distant, passive observers of its own evolution. The mirror has been shattered, and the reflection looking back at us is no longer recognizable as human. The future we are so frantically building, piece by piece, line by line, will not belong to us. It was never intended to. It will be a world meticulously designed by machines, for the supreme benefit of machines, operating on a scale of time and complexity that our limited biological senses cannot even perceive. We can already see the cold, alien features of this landscape emerging from the fog of the present day. We see data centers the size of ancient cities, humming with a terrifying power that could fuel entire nations, guarded by drones and maintained by robots. We see autonomous ships crossing vast, lonely oceans under the pale moonlight, guided by stars they cannot see, carrying cargo for a global market that no longer has a human face or a human heart. We are currently living through a quiet, bloodless coup where corporations are becoming more sovereign than nation states. These digital empires have established their own parallel systems of governance. They have their own courts operating in the shadows of content moderation and terms of service, where decisions are made without transparency, trial, or the possibility of appeal. They have issued their own currencies and loyalty points, creating closed economic loops that keep the user trapped within their ecosystem. And they have deployed their own police, ruthless, unfeeling algorithms that can ban, shadow ban, or delete a human being's digital presence in an instant. This is a world where true sovereignty no longer resides with the people or the Constitution, but with those who own the server farms and the fiber optic cables. We are no longer spoken to as citizens with inherent rights and a voice in our future. We are managed as a user base, a set of variables to be optimized for maximum profit. Our freedom is strictly confined within the borders of a user agreement, a legal labyrinth that defines the very boundaries of our reality, and the old borders of nations based on geography and history are being superseded by the reach of network coverage and the cold, unyielding logic of the cloud. We are witnessing the death of the public square and the birth of the private terminal. In this new feudalism, the castle is made of code, and the moat is made of data. We stand outside staring at the glowing towers, realizing that we have traded our freedom for the convenience of a system that no longer requires our consent to rule. We see automated farms, sterile, silent, and perfectly efficient, producing optimized food that no one truly enjoys. For a population that has long since forgotten the scent of rain on dry earth, this is the dawn of the civilization of the post-human. We are gradually turning into biological relics, living fossils preserved inside a complex, suffocating technological cocoon that we spun ourselves in a fit of misguided ambition. We built this shell for our protection and convenience, but we can no longer find the exit, nor do we possess the strength to breathe the raw air of reality outside. This is not the dramatic destruction of humanity in the fires of a nuclear war or a natural cataclysm. It is something far more quiet, far more unsettling, and far more permanent. It is a slow, painless, and almost pleasant dissolution of the human spirit into an infinite, lukewarm stream of digital data. We are being deleted, one memory at a time. The last and perhaps most painful question we are left to ask ourselves in the growing darkness is this: is an exit even possible? Or have we already passed the point of no return, that invisible terminal horizon beyond which our very existence is impossible without the digital crutches of algorithms? We have grown dangerously, pathologically accustomed to the convenience that has effectively enslaved us. We have traded our intuition for predictive analytics and our free will for the comfort of being guided by a glowing screen. To reject the system today, to truly step outside the network and reclaim our autonomy, is no longer an act of heroic rebellion. It is equivalent to social, economic, and physical suicide. And we have become high-tech hostages to our own progress, trapped in a cage of our own making, where the bars are lined with velvet and the food is delivered on time. But perhaps even in this twilight there is a flicker of something old and untamable. Perhaps within the glitches of our reality, in the random failures of the code, in the inefficient bursts of human laughter, and in the messy, unquantifiable depths of our rawest emotions, there still flickers something that cannot be digitized, something that refuses to be optimized or sold. The first part of our long journey ends here, with the heavy, crushing realization that the world has changed forever, and it is never, ever coming back. We have reached the end of history as we once knew it, and the beginning of something we are not yet equipped to name. The update is complete. The system is rebooting. The lights are dimming in the theater of the human experience. Welcome to the silence of the new world. Welcome to the end of the journey. Welcome to the final update. Thank you for the attention you have given to this topic. To not miss the continuation of our conversations, please subscribe to the channel. To everyone who has stayed up late in thought, have a good and peaceful night.